Rain drizzled softly on the quiet street as the gray sky deepened into dusk. Beneath a flickering street lamp, a little girl stood clutching her mother's worn hand. Her coat was too thin for the weather, her shoes soaked through. The world moved past her, indifferent, until she saw him. A man stepping out of a bakery, a bag of fresh bread in one hand, his expression distant but kind. Lila let go of her mother's hand and ran up to him, water splashing under her feet. "Please marry my mother, mister," she said, her voice trembling. "She's all I've got left." Daniel froze. The little girl's words struck like thunder, cutting through the hum of city noise and the drizzle in the air. He looked down at her, mud on her knees, tear stains on her cheeks, but a fire in her eyes that only love and desperation could spark. Her mother, startled, hurried forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, trying to pull Lila away. But Daniel couldn't move. The girl's words echoed in his heart. He had known silence, too, loss, loneliness, and the ache of an empty home. There was something in this child's plea that pierced through the quiet he had been living in for years. He looked up at the woman beside the child, tired, beautiful in her sorrow, and trying her best. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel didn't feel like a stranger to the world around him. Daniel couldn't shake the girl's voice from his mind. That night, instead of returning to his silent apartment, he took a detour. He found their address written on the bakery paper bag. Lila must have slipped it in. Curiosity, maybe even destiny, pulled him forward. The building was old, its paint flaking, windows patched with plastic. He knocked gently. Maria opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise. She looked tired, more tired than she had earlier, but stood tall, her dignity intact. Inside, the apartment was cramped but clean. A single heater hummed in the corner. Lila sat on the floor drawing with a broken crayon, her smile returning the moment she saw him. "You came," she whispered like it was a miracle. Maria offered tea, clearly hesitant. "I'm sorry about what she said earlier," she said quietly. "She doesn't understand everything." Daniel glanced around. A cracked photo frame held a picture of Maria and a man in military uniform, likely her late husband. The sink held dishes. The fridge buzzed, mostly empty. Still, the space radiated love. "No apology needed," Daniel replied softly. "I've heard a lot of things in my life, but none that moved me like that." As they sat and talked, Daniel saw more than just struggle. He saw strength in Maria's tired eyes, warmth in the way she tucked Lila into bed. He saw a family barely holding on, not asking for charity, just for someone to notice. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was just passing through life. A few days later, Daniel took Lila out for ice cream at a small park near her apartment. The sun was finally out, warming the benches and softening the world just enough to make everything feel possible. Lila sat beside him, legs swinging, a vanilla cone in her hand. She licked it carefully, then glanced up at him with those same wide, searching eyes. "Can I ask you something?" he said gently. She nodded. "Why did you ask me to marry your mom that day?" She paused, her little fingers tightening around the cone. "Because you looked at her," she said, her voice small but certain. "Not many people do anymore." Daniel was quiet. "She works all the time, but she still reads me stories and kisses me goodnight, even when she's so tired she can barely stand. I hear her crying sometimes, when she thinks I'm asleep." Her voice cracked. "She says no one sees her. That she's invisible now." Daniel's heart clenched. It wasn't just a plea for help. It was a child's desperate wish for her mother to feel loved, worthy, seen. "I thought maybe," Lila continued, "if someone kind like you could love her, maybe she'd smile like she used to." Daniel looked out at the pond shimmering in the sunlight. He had buried his heart with his late wife, certain it had no use anymore. But now, this child, this mother, they were breaking it open again, not with pain, but with quiet, aching hope. That weekend, the local community center was hosting a charity dinner for single parents. Daniel had made a few calls, pulling some strings with old friends who now worked in outreach. He invited Maria and Lila as his guests, telling them it was just a small event, nothing fancy. Maria hesitated, uncertain, but eventually agreed after Lila's excited pleading. When they arrived, Maria wore a simple dress that she had likely owned for years, and Lila beamed in a borrowed cardigan 2 sizes too big. They looked out of place among the catered tables and polished shoes, but Daniel never let them feel it. He stayed close, introduced them warmly, and made sure their plates were full. Then, unexpectedly, Daniel stepped up to the microphone. The chatter quieted. "I wasn't planning to speak," he began, eyes scanning the room until they settled on Maria and Lila, "but I've learned something in the past few days that I think needs to be shared." He paused, heart pounding. "I met a little girl who reminded me what love looks like. She asked me to marry her mother, not because she needed a father or money, but because she saw her mom slowly disappearing under the weight of life. She wanted someone to see her mother the way she did, with wonder, pride, and unconditional love." The room was silent. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, voice thick with emotion, "but I know this: kindness, when freely given, can save lives. It saved mine." Maria sat frozen, eyes shining. Lila reached up and grabbed her hand. And in that moment, something began to heal in all three of them. Months passed, and what began as a quiet act of kindness grew into something deeper, something that felt like family. Daniel had helped Maria find a new job at a small bakery owned by a friend. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her time with Lila and filled the apartment with the sweet scent of bread and cinnamon rolls. He visited often, at first just on weekends, then most evenings, always bringing something small, a flower, a book for Lila, or just his presence. He never forced anything, never rushed. He simply showed up, again and again. One evening, the three of them were gathered around the kitchen table, laughing over burnt cookies Maria had tried to bake with Lila's help. The heater hummed, the light was soft, and for once, no one looked tired. Just full. Lila disappeared into her bedroom and came back holding a piece of paper. She held it out shyly to Daniel. He unfolded it. A crayon drawing showed 3 smiling figures holding hands beneath a rainbow. Above them, in shaky but determined letters, it read, "My family. My forever." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He looked up at Maria, who blinked back tears but said nothing, only nodded. That night, as they stood together watching Lila fall asleep, Daniel gently reached for Maria's hand. She didn't pull away. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real. Messy, healing, honest. But it was theirs. And for the first time in years, each of them knew they were no longer alone. They had found home, in one another.